You are familiar with your HOA. Karen lost it formally when she was on a ladder in your driveway at 10 a.m., painting brilliant pink all over your security camera. She is also screaming about digital persecution, not understanding that identical camera is live streaming her face to a massive 65-inch monitor within the nearby police station. Imagine this then. 3 cops there simply laughed at the situation from their coffee. All began on a peaceful Thursday morning. I got a ping from the real-time security app one helped create for the county sheriff's department while drinking coffee, changing firewall settings on my laptop, and preparing for a remote IT consultation. On my house camera, it showed motion alert. Usually nothing spectacular. Simply delivery vehicles or raccoons. Nevertheless, this time, bright pink paint covered the lens, and a strong voice yelling against neighborhood surveillance tyranny and privacy rights. In a few seconds, I understood the woman on the television was none other than Karen Rothschild, HOA secretary and self-appointed neighborhood inspector. And she in broad daylight painting over my camera using a gallon of hot pink paint and a brush that seemed to have survived a war. Still, this was not merely a practical joke. It hardly matched your usual petty HOA power trip. No, this was a proclamation of a full-fledged war against common sense, reason, and technology. I grabbed all of the live feeds from my house fast. Every camera was still running flawlessly. Like a failed rogue art project, she had just managed to cover one lens. The others caught her from many angles. Part of a test project that had only gone live 3 days previously, I connected into the cloud feed, streaming live directly to the police precinct. Karen was unaware that on a high-end TV watched by police just beginning their shift, her face was now absolutely visible. You have to know 2 things to grasp how far it has gone. I am first Jake Mercer, a cyber defense contractor and software engineer. Second, I'm the unlucky soul who believed moving outside Austin into a quiet gated community would result in less headaches. But Karen? From the first day, she has been my unwelcome rival. She did not bring brownies or a welcome basket when I first moved in. No, she showed up with a printed list of HOA infractions I was supposed to commit, like having my recycle container visible on Wednesdays or cutting my hedge too square. She had zero chill and resembled a Roomba designed simply to detect issues. I turned away her at first. I then put up security cameras. Not because I worried about crime, but rather because I worried for Karen. And you would know it as well. She began walking her dog past my house 10 times a day within a week after setting them, peering into the lenses like expecting lasers to blast out. Colonel Puffs, my Pomeranian, even began to growl at my mailbox as though it owed him money. Things started to get more intense. From screaming Orwellian garbage under her breath, Karen started a petition to forbid surveillance technology in our area. She obtained 3 autographs, one of which is her own. So I knew Karen would blow when I volunteered my house as a pilot location for the new Civic SafeLink project, a beta scheme combining home cameras to assist law enforcement. She also exploded. She left furious messages on my door, voicemail rants about monitoring yoga mothers, even accused my mailbox of being a listening device. But in comparison to what was to come, nothing, absolutely nothing. Seeing her now, wildly throwing paint like a crazy mime, I reached for my phone and phoned Deputy Rodriguez, the SafeLink pilot's officer. He laughed at first. The station seemed to be observing everything. Rodriguez laughed. We've got her on 4 angles, and she's giving us a monologue too. She is probably auditioning for court. I waved at her as I came out onto my porch. She stopped mid-swing, paintbrush slung onto the driveway. Not surprised at all, she went from arrogant to shocked when she spotted me carrying my phone. She peered, aware the other cameras were still in operation. I said no words at all. She staggered down the ladder after throwing the brush as though it were on fire. She yelled, "Oh, this isn't over, you corporate drone," backing toward her house. "You will be hearing from the HOA and my attorney." She left vivid footsteps all the way to her yard as she hurried off, walking in the exact pink paint she had just splashed. I shook my head, returned inside, and looked at my email. Deputy Rodriguez has emailed me a film labeled, "Karen Caught in 4K." Later that afternoon, when the sun sank low, I was drinking iced tea on my rear porch when a police cruiser silently drove up Karen's house. 2 policemen left, cool but firm. Karen answered the door with a mug bearing, "World's realest patriot," and dressed in a bathrobe. Though I could not hear what they said, I could see her arm moving madly. She pointed at me several times, then pantomimed a camera with her fingers, like some caffeinated interpretive dance driven by anger. The police gave her a warning after few minutes and left. Like it had personally betrayed her, Karen stood still, staring down at the page. The neighborhood group chat crashed that evening. Police at Karen's. She finds herself in hot water. Anybody know what happened? Following forum, Karen launched a protracted tirade accusing fascist technocrats of a digital assault on liberty. Saying the cameras were psychologically aggressive, she claimed to be a whistleblower. I almost dropped my phone laughing. She even posted a fuzzy selfie next to the pink-smeared camera under the words, "Warrior for Privacy." She was unaware, too, that film she sought to prevent was already duplicated, preserved, and forwarded to the legal office of the city. Painting over a police-connected surveillance camera was obstruction of law enforcement, not only vandalism. Her actions were criminal, as I had legally agreed to the feed, not just nasty. Looking over the video before bed, I found something strange. Karen covered her hair, wore gloves, and made every effort not to touch the camera directly. There was no heat of the moment outburst here. She had had something in mind. She brought a ladder, checked the camera angles, waited until I left for the shop, and attempted to disable several cameras. She meant business, but she undervaluated the setup. And therefore, this scenario was no more only local drama. Karen had crossed a legal line incomprehensible to her. Originally a tantrum, what began as a disturbance had evolved into a thorough investigation just getting begun. The next morning was shockingly silent. Not tranquil silence. Rather, the kind that seems absurd is about to explode. After tending to my dog Baxter, I became aware of something unusual. Karen's regular flagpole was absolutely naked, flying strange parodies or phrases for American flags. Her yard, typically bursting with over-polished garden gnomes, was vacant when her drapes closed. Karen was unusually quiet for someone who lived off of HOA drama. And I understood it was not done. 2 policemen arrived at my door by mid-morning, not for me but to let me know about Karen. Officer Rodriguez and his buddy went over the video once more. They verified Karen's pink paint protest was planned, rather than random damage. What worsened it? She meddled with a live police surveillance stream, flowing through the HOA and City Crime Prevention Initiative. She might thus be charged for changing digital infrastructure in current municipal activities. Rodriguez said they gave her a warning and a citation. But the matter was being escalated to the city prosecutor. To be honest, I detested drama. I just wanted a quiet spot with good Wi-Fi, so I could work from home and let my dog run free, without some suburban tyrant painting covering my cameras. Like every camera bit away at her soul, Karen had always handled my tech as a personal attack. But now? She was surrounded. The neighborhood discussion burst once more as word of the incident got out. Viral screenshots of Karen's pink paint stunt. One person even created a meme saying, "When Karen thinks she's Banksy, but ends up on a police watch list." A few of the neighbors chuckled. Others were concerned. Was Karen erratic? Would she go back in line? About lunchtime, Greg, the president of HOA, sent a note to every homeowner. Greg was a haggard man, looking like he had aged 15 years in service. He clarified the circumstances without mentioning Karen, but he warned everyone that it was a major legal and HOA rule violation to tamper with security systems linked to city surveillance. Karen answered with extra drama naturally. She dropped by my yard carrying a megaphone, screaming about surveillance oppression, private property invasions, and how I was a corporate plant in disguise. She stood on the sidewalk. Had it not been so loud, it would have been humorous. She said my cameras followed her thoughts through facial heat analysis, and the HOA was plotting with law police to harass her. I knew nothing about what that meant. Neighbors watched her from porches or peeked through blinds. She shouted till the cops returned. Less entertained this time. They gently advised her to quit upsetting the peace and trespassing. She insisted, nonetheless, not to stop. She even misled me, claiming I put a camera in her backyard tree. I hadn't and wouldn't even venture close to her land, without court permission and hazardous equipment. She turned and yelled, "You'll be hearing from my attorney in the news," as they walked her home. This is despotism. Then, ironically branded HOA approved, she flung her megaphone into her recycling can dramatically. Karen's attorney issued me a certified letter, just as I felt things could not get weirder. She was allegedly suing me for emotional injury, illegal surveillance, and spiritual boundary invasion. Spiritual restraints? I almost gushed. Still, I gave it careful thought and contacted Marianne, a fierce legal bulldog with more HOA abuse than I could know. "This is not real," she said. "With Karen's name put on it, this is a boilerplate online lawsuit." Still, promised to battle anyway, gathering video, HOA approvals, and my city contract. Karen neglected her work. She staged a press conference the next morning, simply her cousin with an iPhone and a Facebook Live feed, but it seemed official. Sporting a constructed podium with a banner saying, "Citizens Against Spy Cams." She stood in her driveway sporting a phony blazer. She screamed about digital tyranny, neighborhood dignity, and how the Constitution shielded her from tests involving facial recognition. She even charged me with working for the NSA. Her relative pointed the camera toward my house like exposing some covert espionage secret. Mostly bewildered or sarcastic, the live broadcast comments were nasty. She appeared not to give a damn. She spoke for 15 minutes, even posing fictitious questions out of thin air. She then stumbled over a garden hose and dropped into a bush. The camera continued to roll. The video went on local forums and attracted 10,000 views in 2 hours. Karen was not only HOA upset, but also publicly embarrassed mad. She shared images of fictitious laws and ranted that anyone distributing the video was disparaging her through surveillance back in the neighborhood discussion. Anyone who laughed at her spiritual trauma, she threatened to sue. People quit the chat in waves. Officer Rodriguez informed me, meanwhile, that the footage was now official evidence. The city prosecutor was laying a case. The pink paint stunt Karen did set off major legal ramifications. Changing the camera was interfering with government operations, since it was a part of an active city initiative. Should Karen find guilty, she might be subject to penalties and community service. I am not out for retribution. I simply want quiet, good internet, and to enjoy my house. But Karen? She has gone over the line. And now this narrative. It is not quite finished. I simply wanted calm so that my cameras may stay unharmed. But Karen was not going to let this go silently very soon. She had descended into full-fledged conspiracy mode, surpassing basic neighborly irritation. She thought I was the villain, and she was a victim of some great digital plan. But really? She was excavating her own hole. And doing it live streaming herself with horrible lighting and a cracked microphone. Later that evening, I noticed her staring at me from her window as I changed a fresh camera position just to be safe. She owned a notepad and binoculars. I wasn't sure if she was noting for her next live performance or spying. In any case, I was not bothered. The video was safe, the law supported me, and Karen had no idea how horrible things were about to get. Just a week had passed since Karen's full breakdown. Paint, megaphones, lawsuits, live streams. Though most neighbors tried to seem as though everything was normal once more, I knew otherwise. Once Karen hooked onto a fantasy, she was not the kind to give up. Her fixation on my cameras, the HOA, and this phantom monitoring plot was just deepening. One morning, that became shockingly obvious as my network began to behave oddly. My system searches for suspected digital breaches automatically, not only records video. Indeed, an alert noted a suspicious effort to enter my system, from inside rather than from outside the area, unlike a standard hack. Someone sought to access my local server feed. Examining the metadata closely, I found the attack linked to an adjacent IP address. It belonged to a house 3 doors down, an old couple barely able to run their remote garage door. So yes, the dots linked fast. Karen was surfing Wi-Fi from another person. I confirmed it the following day by stealthily pinging their network as I passed their house. The signal spike came out clean. She was piggyboarding their open Wi-Fi, or persuaded them to provide her access. Still, the worst part is this. Karen wrote not the script I was using to examine my system. Someone with basic knowledge of hacking tools produced it. Karen received aid. Of course, I searched farther. Looking over the header comments of the script, I saw a tag. RX Studios plus a Discord account. Curious, I logged onto an old Discord account and messaged the handle acting as a buyer trying to disable monitoring systems. A teen, most likely 16 or 17, answered in a few minutes. We called him Rex. What system did you wish to hack, he asked. I forwarded to him a phony screenshot. That's straightforward, he said. Last week, someone paid me to do exactly that for a woman experiencing HOA camera anxiety. She made me a gift card payment. I needed just that to hear. From paintbrush vandalism, Karen had moved into cybercrime. I should have found it startling. But really? It seemed at this point like another Tuesday in our ridiculous suburban war zone. I forwarded Officer Rodriguez all of the texts, screenshots, and logs after compiling them. Karen just went federal. His reply was flawless. I decided to expose all this craziness out into the open, while I waited for cops to act. That Saturday, the HOA set aside a board meeting. I asked to supply a statement. The president of HOA, Greg, seemed both afraid and relieved. The room was crowded as the conference began. Even those who had never shown up before were there carrying popcorn. Rising, I plugged in my USB and showed the video on the HOA screen. First, Karen in daylight washes my cameras while mumbling about neighborhood persecution. The room gasped. Then it laughed. Police vehicle video then showed her sidewalk protest using a megaphone and the citation delivery. A few elder members even gave applause. Others shook their heads. But I was still not done. I then displayed a digital chronology of the attempted cybercrime from my system to the neighboring IP. Then the Discord chat with Rex. Greg sat slack-jawed, blinking as though he were seeing a courtroom scene come to life. My attorney's legal summary, which detailed Karen's actions, harassment, obstruction of municipal programs, digital trespassing, and illegal hacking, finished me. The room went quiet for a little period after I left. Someone yelled from the rear then. She did what? People pulling out phones caused whispers to abound in the room. Karen burst into the room after observing from the corridor with arms crossed. This is a smear campaign. She yelled. He is manipulating every one of you. He is spying on the entire block. Greg responded coolly. Karen, you were invited to speak. Kindly take the podium. She objected. Rather, she yelled about how the HOA was digitally enslaving the neighborhood through law enforcement collusion. She insisted the conference be called off and referred to me as a tech dictator. Does she think she's in a Marvel movie? Someone said quietly. She turned sharply and charged half the room with being CIA informants. The board decided finally to call off the conference early. Greg said they would have a private session to go over Karen's membership, maybe suspending or eliminating her. First in HOA annals. Hurrying out screaming about constitutional warfare and petitioning the governor, Karen left. I half expected her to start a hunger strike on her lawn. Still, the fallout was not only HOA politics. Karen's attempted failed hacking that evening set off legal procedures. After police questioned Rex, the young man she hired, his parents were notified. He admitted he was freelancing for gift cards and mentioned Karen requested how to turn off security feeds. This was not any more meddling. This was planned interference with metropolitan systems. Karen received official notice the following day. She under investigation for breaking municipal cybersecurity rules and HOA guidelines. Her response came out as almost cinematic. She recorded herself cutting the letter in two and tossing it onto a lighted barbecue grill. From her driveway, a Bluetooth speaker screamed, "We're not going to take it." Her cousin shot the entire event. The public wasn't laughing unlike in past years. Comments aimed at her turned negative. People observed she was not some oddball renegade. She was crazy and deadly. She might withdraw and attempt to spin the narrative with another podcast or rant, so I reasoned. But I discovered a letter stuck to my mailbox the following morning. Written in red ink it said, "You may have won this round, but justice is arriving. I understand everything." Benevolent underneath was a rough eye with spikes. I wasn't sure whether that constituted a curse or a threat. I was done though playing defense. I visited with the legal team of the HOA as well as my attorney. We began gathering materials for a civil lawsuit covering harassment, digital intrusion, slander, public disturbance, and attempted system manipulation. If she moved out of the area, I even promised to overlook damages. But something said she wouldn't go silently. Karen was not the kind to back down from. She would escalate till the system pushed her hand. Officer Rodriguez then answered another call. They had sufficient to file official charges. The prosecutor was ready between the videos, hacking efforts, and Karen's public comments. All I had to do was sign one last document verifying my camera network was legally connected to the police Safe Link program. I signed it late that evening. The street lights on our block went out 10 minutes that same evening. One word, traitor, was spray paint applied on my garage door when they returned. Karen was not merely in need. She was caught. And real turmoil starts when Karen feels cornered. The streetlight outage was a warning. She was braking faster than anticipated. The red letters pouring down my garage door informed me she was not merely venting openly. She was now working in the shadows, little and scary. I already knew it was her. I had no need to even review the clip. She had snuck across the grass in camouflage trousers and a hoodie at 2:14 a.m., spray can in hand. Like some great insurrection, she paused once to squarely face the camera and turned the bird. She then scribbled the word and vanished into darkness. She had no knowledge of what? Within minutes, police were sent the already flagged video. Her previous citation was broken. Hence this latest act put everything into full criminal realm. By dawn, the neighborhood was alive. Karen strikes again, someone said on a picture of my garage uploaded on the community forum. Replies came in abundance. Some considered it to be a hoax. Others wanted Karen kicked from HOA events. A few questions until I posted the night camera, showing her vandalism midway through the act. That quieted all questions. The HOA discussion burst into the most disorderly digital town hall ever inside an hour. People told tales about Karen's years of unbridled conduct, some small and some frightening. My cameras at last revealed what everyone was too afraid to say or too polite. Officer Rodriguez called once again around middle morning. With a warrant covering not only vandalism but also harassment, attempted hacking, and interference with a municipal program, the prosecutor was proceeding. Officers would formally search Karen's property and personally deliver charges that afternoon. Though I didn't know what they were searching for, I had a very decent idea. Burner phones, hacking directions, maybe additional sabotage ideas. Karen treated her entire mess as though it were a war, her house like a bunker. She had, however, greatly understated the length of time the law would allow her to play that game. Karen moved next in the little interval between her early morning vandalism and the police showing up. Not emails, not social media posts, she sent genuine paper letters personally delivered to every mailbox in the community, including mine. Mine was folded and covered with a crimson wax stamp fashioned like a snake. Inside was a 3-page tirade headed, "The eye of surveillance has blinded the heart of community." She said I was turning the area into a digital prison, manipulating the HOA, and plotting with government agencies. Saying the cameras were a virus, she exhorted everyone to take back the block using analog courage. Those who stare through lenses may soon find themselves blind. The last line sounds like a menace dressed in poetry. Generally, neighbors shook their heads or laughed. Still, the vibe had changed. People were annoyed and fed up rather than afraid. The same woman who once organized pet photo sign-ups and wine tastings has become full cult leader in weeks. The neighborhood knew it now, everyone around. Neighbors sent letters thanking me, claiming they had been harassed into quiet for years. Karen felt her hold was becoming weak. 2 unmarked automobiles stopped at her house about 2:30 p.m. Not sirens, not drama. Simply regular clothes police with folders. I observed from far away when they knocked. At first Karen did not respond. 5 minutes later, the door crested open. Claiming diplomatic immunity as a sovereign resident, Karen looked to be sporting a silver foil cape and sunglasses. She turned away, letting them inside. The cops then produced a search warrant. She said it was invalid, called them traitors, and attempted a photo with one officer midway through the conversation. She tried to smash the door when that failed. However, legally they stopped her and let her in. Once within, Karen resumed live streaming. Her stream did not go very smoothly. Now largely for entertainment, her fans teased her incessantly. She told the search story like an action movie raid. The cops collected papers and electronics coolly in parallel. They eventually discovered what they were looking for. A notebook including comments like, Cam 2 blind spot, and night route, along with sketches of my residence. That was surreal. Karen was handling this as though it were a clear-cut combat strategy. About an hour later, the cops left with evidence bags and formally informed her of accusations. She yelled, insisted on talking to the HOA president, then broke down on her porch. Though more devastating than anything she could have anticipated, it was hardly a dramatic arrest. The whole event was captured on a neighbor's doorbell cam. Within hours, the video of Karen lashing about freedom and facial recognition tyranny went viral. Local news grabbed it under the heading, HOA resident faces charges after painting over police-linked security cameras. Karen turned into a whirl from then on, twisting the narrative. She said the video had editing done. She said I bought off the HOA. She asserted the police were big tech hired actors. She even claimed to have developed herself anti-surveillance powder from the pink paint. Still, the internet was not purchasing it. She posted more, and the worse it got in reality. Comedy skits made of her anger videos. Someone turned one protest into a hit remake. A TikTok trend became, I see everything, you cannot see me. While the HOA acted, the internet laughed. A special vote that weekend determined whether Karen ought to be taken off the board. The votes were all in agreement. Not even her one board friend protected her. Greg said to a packed room. For repeated violations of community guidelines, illegal actions, and conduct unbecoming of a board member, Karen Rothschild is hereby removed effective immediately. Karen vanished from sight. She began a podcast called The Karen Chronicles, How I Fought the Surveillance State from My Lawn, locked inside. At last I began to find some calm. The cameras were safely locked. Legal action was ahead of us. The community had banded together. But one of my side gate motion sensors sent a signal, even as I let myself think it was over. I went over the live broadcast. None of Karen. It was a delivery man with a large banner. He stood it against my fence and left. I came outdoors to study it. Warning. This man spies on you, it added. In vivid red paint. Simply the message. No name, no return address. I turned to look. Again, viewing from her upper window with binoculars was Karen. She had lost her silver foil cape. She now donned a hoodie declaring, offline is freedom. I shook my head, then pulled down the placard. My phone buzzed once more as I reversed back to the home. Another warning. This one derived from the police app one designed. Someone had posted a fresh clip. Karen returned, just this once. She had assistance. The night before, 2 masked men were seen on camera strolling next my house with a toolbox. One carried a laptop, the other wire cutters. She was not spiraling only by herself now. She was hiring. It was simply beyond midnight. Reversing the film for what seemed to be the 100th time, I sat in front of my security feed. 2 masked individuals were prowling the side yard there. Moving with determination, yet like beginners. One carried a laptop in one hand uncomfortably. The other dropped wire cutters close to the corner where my fiber optic connection passed through a protected conduit. Knowing Karen might become more aggressive, I strengthened it a week sooner. Seeing they hadn't made it through calmed me. Still, their very existence verified the worst. Karen was not sinking into paranoia by herself. She had persuaded many people to support her cause. Friends? Family here? Alternatively, just as unhinged as she was? Originally a tantrum over cameras, what started out as such had evolved into something like a neighborhood insurgency. I refused to let it carry on. I copied the safe link coordinator of the city and emailed the video right away to Officer Rodriguez. These days, this was more than just trespassing. Attempts at sabotaging of city-partnered surveillance systems were made. They gave it careful thought. A task force briefed in a few hours. Assigned to conduct a formal inquiry was a cybercrimes team. The digital paper trail Karen left was deeper than I had ever imagined. Rex, the young person she had hired, had already turned in a sworn testimony. He said Karen sought to involve him once more, giving more gift cards to disable what she referred to as the spy grid. She wanted backup this time though. Rex's pals or worse were most likely the masked guests shown on video. Someone she had discovered prowling the unusual anti-tech forums she had started visiting. Karen continued without slowing down as the legal wheels rotated. She actually grew more obvious than before. She came out of her house early the following morning sporting what appeared to be a homemade militia uniform, decorated in patches bearing slogans like "Digital Freedom Fighter" and "Truth Over Tech." Holding a tablet in one hand and a walkie-talkie in the other, she marched up and down the sidewalk, speaking into the walkie-talkie as though she were organizing some fictitious command headquarters. There were some neighbors stopping to observe. Others closed their drapes. Her cousin followed behind, documenting the entire affair, narrating as though it were a documentary on civil rights. But they were not fooling anyone either. The HOA issued a statement by afternoon that Karen was permanently off-limits from voting on community matters or attending meetings. She also paid fines for the vandalism and disturbances her illegal protest event generated. Following tradition, she pinned the message to her garage door, just next to a large printed QR code connecting to her truth files. These documents consisted of one crazy article attempting to demonstrate that my dog Baxter was part of a facial recognition system, along with a series of PDF rants and fuzzy street camera images. Neighbors stopped wondering if Karen may change at this point, and started treating her like a local hazard. One neighbor even began regularly sharing daily Karen Watch updates on the community board, complete with GIFs and caustic comments. The next significant change occurred when authorities carried out a search warrant grounded on masked intruder footage. From Karen's house and her cousin's car, they grabbed several electronics, including a backup drive marked Operation Blackout. Officer Rodriguez said it was crammed with scanned HOA records, handwritten surveillance notes, and strange sketches that made her seem as like she was organizing an attack on the local electrical system. They came across no instruments that could cut main lines or anything too sophisticated. But the goal was obviously evident. Karen was recording her preoccupation, as though a military general penning a memoir. As evidence grew, the prosecutor decided to move forward with things. Officially accused with several counts: criminal mischief, conspiracy to commit computer sabotage, and repeated violations of a protective ordinance connected to the SafeLink project. Karen, she responded as follows: predictable. She said she was under deep neighborhood state. Framing. She posted videos outlining how this was all a scheme to quiet her. She held a tomato in one video, and said it was a secret surveillance tool placed by the HOA to track soil conditions close to her garden. My cameras, she informed her followers, were channels for government mind control waves. She even said that after a drone tried to scan her garage's QR code, it had been neutralized. I ignored it. There was no reason. Karen no longer was debating facts. She was striving to keep her fantasy relevant. Her court hearing day came sooner than expected. She had lost her HOA position, alienated almost every neighbor by then, and turned into a web joke. By 7 a.m., local news vans were stationed across the street, trying to find her leaving point. Never one to miss a major event, Karen left dressed in what resembled a judicial robe covered in protest stickers. She waved at cameras carrying a handmade placard saying, "I'll see you in the truth court." She then got into the car of her cousin and headed off. Everyone stared silently, not sure whether to laugh or just feel relief. At court, things immediately fell apart. She repeatedly interrupted the judge, turned away responsibility, and insisted on a jury of non-digital citizens. My lawyer brought written declarations, logs, videos, and threat documentation. Karen kept trying to object until the judge cautioned her that one more outburst would indicate disrespect of court. She stood silently finally, clearly startled. The prosecutor presented a convincing case. Her behavior was illegal, disruptive, and hazardous rather than only odd. The judge said Karen would be punished, put under a community restraint order, and have to finish a psychiatric assessment before attending next HOA activities or public neighborhood gatherings. But the videos sealed the situation. Closing with a collection of her exploits, the prosecutor closed not for laughter, but rather to demonstrate a clear pattern of obsession, escalation, and reprisal. In the videos, Karen ascended ladders painting cameras, spoke through megaphones, wore foil capes, brandished spray cans, yelled at police, hired teenage hackers, and powerfully narrated her demonstrations. She more resembled a neighborhood nuisance spinning into lunacy than she did a victim. That evening Karen came home and said nothing. No capes, no live streaming, no flags. She came inside, closed the blinds, and remained silent. The quiet felt odd since it was so strong. I walked Baxter and past her house. The car of her relative disappeared. The lights were off for the first time in many weeks. It seemed like a typical neighborhood once more. I still have to finish though. The HOA agreed to let me put a permanent fixture at the community entrance as a last measure. Under the streetlights was a newly constructed wooden and steel sign. It said, "Cameras active, protected community footage streams live to local law enforcement." One last touch was a sign bearing a reminder. Security is not surveillance when transparency is respected. A metal print, a single frame from the video, stood mounted next to the placard. Just seconds before Karen noticed she was on camera, she mid-ladder with paintbrush in hand opened her mouth mid-rant. It was not resentful. It was a forbation. The area knew it as the Karen Monument. The next day she noticed it. She passed slowly while I was outside mending my mailbox. Her window rolled downward. She appeared for a second as though she would yell. She didn't though. She simply fixated on the sign. Then pulled up her window and headed off. There are battles where explosions finish them. Others wind up in quiet. That one concluded with a camera and a paintbrush. Karen at last discovered the hard way that occasionally, the only thing keeping you out of actual trouble is the item you are trying to ruin.